Hi everyone, Savannah here, and welcome to another Patreon exclusive video. Today we're drawing a peaceful golden hour porch swing, warm light, quiet lines, and that soft summer evening glow. As always, I'm using my custom Procreate brush set, which you can download below, along with the sketch template and color palette to follow along. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing we're going to do is change that background color, so select layers, click background color, and scroll in the palette section until you find the porch light palette section. Once you're there, we're going to grab this dark brown color as the backdrop. Then we're going to create a new layer, bring that below the outline layer, grab the circle blend brush, and we're going to start adding in some light to the scene. So we're going to make the light come from the top right. So grab that medium dark brown color and start adding that to the top mid right section, and then we'll grab the lighter brown color and add that in a second as well. And this is a pressure sensitive brush, so you can press harder if you want more of that color to come in and lighter in areas we want. Don't worry about blending it out at this phase. We're just adding in this color and then we'll blend it out in a second. And now let's go ahead and start blending these colors out. So you can grab that brown color and start lightly with a little less pressure blending these colors in. You can grab those in between colors as well. So if you want a color that's kind of blended between this medium brown and this dark brown, just hold your finger down on the screen and it will color pick that color for you. And you'll see that I am just very lightly pressing down on the Apple Pencil here to blend these colors out. But again, if you want to blend them out even further, and I do this a lot, you just grab that color like I'm doing here. Just hold your finger down and it will grab those in between colors, and you can use that to blend out even further. And we're just doing this very light, soft glow in the background. We will add a glow towards the end in some of the sections, but for now, we're just going to very lightly blend this color out for the background, and then we'll work on adding in colors for the other areas in the scene. And in theory, you could do a Gaussian blur on this. I do that in some of my videos. I'll do a Gaussian blur. It just depends on the style I'm going for. But sometimes I like to have it look a little bit more painterly, which is why I'm doing it this way. It kind of pulls in a little bit of the colors in not a uniform way. Whereas the Gaussian blur, I feel like it makes it a little bit more uniformed. It just depends on your styles. If you wanted to do a Gaussian blur, you definitely could do that on this part here. And you don't have to worry about going too far down on the screen here or right behind the bench because that will be covered. I just happen to do a little bit more behind the bench just to blur it out a little bit, but again, you don't have to worry about those areas. Now create a new layer. Let's go ahead and fill in the bench. I'm going to grab this kind of a tannish brown color, that circle brush, and we're going to outline and fill in the shape of the bench here. Now I did originally was going to do the rope in this as well, but I decided to do the rope on a separate layer because we're going to be adding in a lot of detail, and so I wanted the detail for the rope to be on a separate layer so I can really focus on the shape of the porch swing here. So go ahead and trace the porch swing. We'll fill it in with this color and then we'll work on adding in details as we continue with the sketch. So we'll also add in the yellow blanket, the pillows, things like that. So all these details we'll start working on as we added color. And I usually keep my brush pretty small when I'm doing the outline layer because that helps me get the details in the edges much better than if I used a bigger brush. And then once I have that outline filled out, I will start doing the inside. I'll make that brush a little bit bigger, still being mindful around the edges because we did use a small brush for that. But once you kind of have a little bit more of the edges filled in, then you can do an even bigger brush. It'll fill it in much faster than if you use a smaller brush size. And I turn off the outline layer when I fill in because I want to see how it's looking as I'm filling it in. It's a shape looking how I want it to look, things like that. So I turned the outline layer off. This I turned it on and off as filling it in because there's certain shapes here that cover the porch swing. So I want to make sure that I was filling in where it was going to be exposed. So for instance, the blanket and the pillows are on the porch swing. So I didn't have to fill everything in if I didn't want to, but I want to be mindful of those placements. And after you get this all filled in, I'm going to work on the blanket layer next, just filling in the yellow shape. So on a new layer, you're going to grab the yellow color, and it's same thing as what we just did with the bench. We're going to outline the shape of it and then fill it in with that yellow color. Now the pillow on the left will be in front of the blanket, so you don't have to worry about making that edge too clean or neat. But the bottom here is where there's going to be fringe. For now, we're not going to fill that in. We will do that later. I'll show you how I add the fringe in once we add more details, but just go ahead and do the main shape of this blanket first. And after you get this blanket filled in, we're going to work on filling in the shapes of the pillows. The pillow on the left, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be in front of the blanket, but the pillow on the right will be tucked behind. So we're going to work on the pillow to the right first. You're going to create a new layer above the bench layer, but below the blanket layer. Grab that light grayish yellow orange color, and same thing as what we've been doing. You're going to have that circle brush. You're going to trace and fill in the shape of this pillow to the right. And I did use a straight line at the bottom here. To do a straight line, you just drag the pencil across the screen with it still held down on the screen. Just hold it there and it will snap it into a straight line for you, and then you can kind of drag it around to where you want to place it. And with this right pillow done, now we will work on the left one. With this left pillow, you're going to put it above, so we're creating a new layer above the blanket layer. But we do need to be mindful of this pillow because the way that we did the bench, it's all on the same layer. So the armrest we could have done on a separate layer and put that above this pillow layer, but we didn't do that. So we're going to trace around the armrest for the left side of this pillow because that's going to be tucked behind the armrest, so we just need to be mindful of that, and then we'll trace the edge similar to what we've been doing. You don't have to worry about going around where the ropes are because we'll do those on a separate layer, but just that armrest, you want to make sure that you go around that armrest for this pillow on the left. And now with that pillow filled in, we are going to work on the ropes. So on a new layer above this pillow layer, we're going to add those ropes in. So I'm going to actually grab a yellowy orange color for this. I'm using that circle brush still, and I'm just going to draw a straight line in this area. So I didn't make it as thick as what I had drawn here. You can make these ropes however thick you want to. We will kind of bulk them up with a technique that I used to make them look a little bit more like rope, but just know you can make them whatever size you want. I did end up doing these on two separate layers. So the ropes on the left I have above everything, and the ropes on the right I tuck behind the pillow layer. So that's, or the one on the right pillow layer. So just be mindful of that. They're both still above the bench layer, but I just wanted to make sure that it was tucked behind that pillow to the right. Now with a new layer, we're going to work on just adding in some color to the ground here. This is going to be at the bottom of all the other layers. So as you saw, I created a new layer and I brought it below the bench layer. And we're just going to add in some green here. I'm not going to go super detailed with the ground here. I'm going to add a little bit of color variation, make it a little bit lighter where that light is going to kind of hit it. But other than that, we're not going to add too much plant life. I'm adding a few kind of up areas here to make it look like there's some plant life here. When I add the other colors, I'll do kind of a similar technique, but I'm not going super detailed with this area. So I started with that dark yellow orange color. Now I grabbed that medium color. I switched over to the blend brush for this, or the blend circle brush, and I'm just very lightly adding in this lighter color in the bottom right area. And don't worry about blending too much. We will work on blending it, but then I grabbed a little bit of this lighter, almost white color, and I'm just adding it here and there to brighten up this whole area. And then I'll go back over it with these other two colors that we added in and just very lightly blend these colors together. And I did go a little too far with the light, so I'm bringing some more of that dark color back in because I want there to be a little bit of that shadow underneath of the bench here. So I just want to bring a little bit more of that darker color over to the right, and then I'm just going to keep working on blending these three colors out. You can change the brush size, so I changed the brush size a little bit to add kind of like it looks like plants kind of coming up off of the ground. Again, super simple in the shapes here because I didn't want this to be too complex. My main focus is on this bench, and so I just wanted to add a little bit here and there, just to give it the illusion that there's some sort of ground, some sort of maybe like grass or something here underneath the floating bench. Now let's go ahead and work on the ropes, and I'll show you what I use to make them look a little bit more like rope. So grab that dark brown color, that medium dark brown color, the circle blend brush, and we're going to start with the ropes on the right side. And I just kind of did these diagonal lines here up and down the rope to give it starting to look like a rope. So just very loose. You don't have to be very detailed here. Again, just kind of giving the impression that this is a rope. So I'm just kind of doing these um, kind of diagonal lines here up and down the rope, and then I dragged a line, a dark line on the side there, and then just kind of shaded it in a little bit to blend out that left side of the rope a little bit. We will come back in with a lighter color that I think we use the same light color that I used originally, but we will come back in and bring a little bit more lightness too. So again, the technique that I'm doing is I just drew a straight line in the darker color along the left side where the shadow would be, and then kind of doing these diagonal lines. I'm doing a little bit of a combination of how I did that first one here. So I'm just kind of doing a little squiggly lines, little diagonal lines as I'm going up and down, and then grabbing that light yellow orange color, doing the same thing but in reverse now. So I'm going into these diagonal lines, going from the right down to the left to blend out those colors a little bit more and bring more of that light back in. And I use the lighter color here on the right side, so that medium tone brown and this light, almost white creamy color for the right side, because that is going to be in the sunlight. And so the rope needs to kind of reflect that, needs to show that it's a little bit brighter. For the rope on the left, I use the dark brown color for the shadow area, and then I use the mid-tone brown color for the kind of highlighted right side of the rope, because it still will have a little bit of light, but it's not going to be as bright as it being directly in that sunlight. So just keep that in mind when you're filling in these two ropes, that the left side is a little bit darker because it's going to be in that shadow, but the right side is going to be brighter because it's in that sunlight. And we're doing the same technique that we did on the right side. So drew those straight lines on the left with this very dark brown color, and then just kind of adding in these diagonal lines or squiggles here to give it the impression that there's a little bit of a rope there. And then we'll go back through with that medium brown on the right side and do the same technique just in reverse. And I did these lines on the right side of it to make it look a little bit more clean and not so muddied. When you're adding in those diagonal lines, it kind of gets a little bit muddied. So that's what this kind of line helps bring that down a little bit. And same thing for the one on the right. We're going to just draw a line on the right side where we added that light color. Now we're going to work on the pillow, so set both of those pillow layers to alpha lock, and we're going to start adding in some shadows and some other tones to these pillows just to give it a little bit more definition, make it look a little bit more like a pillow that's not so stiff with just one solid color. So I'm going to start with this grayish orange color, just add a little bit where there would be shadows, so a little bit around where the um, armrest is going to be, and then we'll add in some more darker kind of gray colors, just using that circle blend brush, just adding in a little bit here and there on this pillow. And so again, grabbing some darker colors, we'll grab this darker gray and add a little bit of shadow up against the armrest, and we'll keep blending these out until it looks how you want it to look for this pillow. And then we'll jump over to the right side pillow and add a little bit more texture to that one as well. Now on that right pillow, same thing, we're going to be pulling in some darker colors. I will be grabbing a couple of the colors from the color palette. You can use the gray, you can use a little bit more brown if you want it to be more brown tones. We have this like grayish brown color, so it's kind of a combination of the two. And again, we're just going to be adding in some dark colors here and there to give it the illusion that it's a pillow. It's not just a straight flat pillow. There is some curvature to it. There is some shape to it. And so we're just going to keep building up these two pillows, adding in these darker tones, playing with the shadows to make it look how you want it to look for that particular pillow. And we're still using that circle blend brush because it allows you to blend these colors really well and really easily while also being able to add more pigment. So as you can see, I added a little bit more of that dark gray there in the corner, but then I can easily blend it out with the colors I'm picking up on top of it. So you can really play around with it, use hard lines, use soft lines with the circle blend brush. So again, we're just really building up the colors here, adding some contrast, adding some shadows to the different areas to really build up the look of these pillows. And next we're going to work on the blanket. So I'm going to grab, it's called brown, but it's kind of like an orange color. I'm going to grab that orange color and start in the shapes here. I have a kind of this upside down triangle shape here and some of these um, parallel lines here. I'm going to add some shadow there with this orange color, and then I'm going to go in and add more shadow with the brown color. And again, make sure you set this layer to alpha lock so you're not going outside the lines. We will turn off alpha lock and fix the edges here because it looks a little too perfect around the edges with it being a knit blanket. It's not going to be a straight line, and so I'll show you what I do there. But with this darker brown color, I'm going up more into the corners of the blanket, kind of where the folds are. And then we'll work on blending all this out. I'll show you the technique that I use to make it look more like a knit blanket. And then we will add the fringe at the end as well. And grabbing that yellow color, I did kind of blend these darker colors in. We will add a little bit more back in, so don't worry. But I just want to kind of soften the colors here so it didn't look so stark and so distinct from each other. I wanted them to blend a little bit. Now grabbing that orange color called brown, we're going to make these kind of like little V shapes that go along the blanket shape. So the V shapes are kind of off centered from each other. So you'll do the left side up a little bit more. So it's kind of like a T almost looking like shape. And so we're just kind of making these marks. You could do them like a V, you could do them like an X as well. An X would work fine as here as well because we're not going super detailed. We're just making the impression that this is a knit blanket. And so some of my shapes might look a little bit more like an X, but we're just kind of making these lines again. Think of how a knit blanket is. There's a lot of these rows, and so just kind of follow that row along the shape of that blanket. We're starting with this orange color. We will add in more darker color. We'll add in some lighter bright color from the sun as well, or the sunbeam that's kind of coming in. But we're just going to be adding in with the orange first these colors, and then we'll add in more to distinguish where these shadows are because they're kind of getting buried a little bit. So again, using this kind of a V shape or an X, you can do an X as well. We're just going along those lines there. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but grab the brown and go into the corners here where those shadows are. Again, because they kind of got blurred out a little bit as we were adding these layers, I want to bring that back up. And so I'm grabbing that dark brown color to bring in more of the shadow areas. And I'm kind of going outside of the areas that we first defined as a shadow. So I'm going a little bit on the left side of the blanket here because again, that's going to be more in the shadow. I'm just adding bits here and there. I'm not necessarily doing the X shape or the V shape here. I'm kind of adding more dots in the corners of that because if you think of like a knit blanket, there's going to be shadows where that or like crocheted or knit blanket, there'd be kind of a little bit of shadows here and there in the areas that are open. And so that's what I'm kind of making here. So I did a couple V shapes along the bottom and where the shadows are. And then I did kind of just like a little circle-ish areas up in the other sections. And then I'm grabbing the yellow to go over a lot of this again, just to blend it out a little bit more. Again, that's a lot of how I do the tutorials and how I do a lot of this art is I just go layer over layer over layer because it helps blend it up. It helps build up the shape of this. I don't do a lot of separate layers for a lot of my details. I keep everything on the same layer because I want to be as close to traditional art as I can be, and not doing it on many layers. You're gonna get as traditional as you can get with digital. So that's kind of what I do here. Now it is looking better, but I mentioned the edges look too perfect. So turn that alpha lock layer off and we're just going to very lightly go around the edge and loosen this up a little bit. Again, it was looking too straight. It wasn't looking like a knit blanket. So I'm just going to loosen it up. I did grab that orangish color to go around the left side. And I'm doing that again a little bit on the right as well. I'm just very lightly tracing the edge and doing a little bit of that V shape along the edge, not too crazy, but just enough to kind of make it look like that blanket is going along the edge there, and it's not just kind of cut off like a straight blanket. That's not what we want. On the right side, I'm taking that lighter yellow and just kind of, again, very softly going outside the edge here just to bring that edge a little bit more of a soft look. Now with that circle blend brush, we're going to do the fringe. So I'm just dragging, and I have that yellow color still selected. I'm just dragging these lines down very lightly. I'm not pressing too hard. It's going to pull a little bit of the pigment from the blanket there down with it, but mostly it's going to be yellow. We will build up on this. We will add some other shades to this as well. So we'll pull in some darker colors here. So grab the orangey brown color, grab the dark brown color, just build it up a little bit here to give it more dimension. But that's all that you have to do for the fringe. Is just very lightly drag that line straight down with whatever color you're selected, and it will make it look like fringe here on the blanket. And for now, we're going to be done with the blanket, but we will add some more highlights here in a little bit. But for now, let's go work on the bench. So make sure you set that layer to alpha lock. I'm grabbing this dark yellow, called dark yellow orange, but it's really like a green color. Still using that circle blend brush, we're going to go along the back here, kind of separating the back boards. And then I'm going to add some of this green color to the left side of the bench. So the inside of the armrest on the right, and then the left side of the armrest on the left, I'm going to add some of that color here just to darken it up a little bit, because again, those are going to be in the shadows. They're not going to be shown. So I'm just adding a little bit of dark color here. I'm just placing it. I'm not really blending in a lot of these colors. I will work on blending that as I go, but I'm just grabbing in some dark colors. So I'm grabbing in that medium brown color here. Again, just kind of going along the edge to give it a little bit more darkness, because it is in the shadow, and then we'll work on blending each of these sections out a little bit as we continue. And you can use a lot of the colors in the color palette. Again, just be mindful of where that light is hitting and where the shadows are going to be hitting. I do grab in that light, almost white color, and add that in on the right side here where that sun's could be hitting. And I also did against the back of the bench. Now you can do a blend mode over top of this layer to do that way if you want to. I just happen to want to do it by drawing it in here, but I do also use a blend mode. I'll show you what I mean by that here in a little bit, and how I'll make this look a little bit more like it's the sun kind of hitting it, but I'm just adding in some of the colors here and there. We'll work on blending out all these colors here once I'm done adding in, but I'm just grabbing in some more green tones. For the shadow, I'm adding in these mid brown tones, just kind of bringing these colors out, giving it a little bit more dimension so it's not just one color. I want to have some uniqueness to it. So I'm adding in some gray tones, I'm adding in some brown tones, again, just to really give this a lot of dimension, a lot of character to this bench. And it does help to turn that outline layer off from time to time so you can see how your edges are looking, especially when you're doing something like this that's all on the same layer. It's hard to see where those lines are, especially when you turn that layer off. So just make sure you're turning those layers on and off. You're getting the lines where you want the lines to be, and then you can go through and blend everything out. I also grabbed like that green color here. I grabbed that color to define the edges a little bit more, and I blended out a little bit of these colors, but I kind of want to keep them a little more loose how these are. So I didn't blend them too much. I wanted a little bit of this kind of choppier look, and so that's how I kind of kept this area. I just defined it a little bit with that dark green color. Now I'm just kind of blending in this white a little bit. This is again where that light is kind of coming down, so I wanted to bring a little bit more of gray in to make it look like it is that light kind of shining on the bench and not just a white line across the bench. And so that's why I'm kind of blurring it in with this little bit of gray. And the same thing with the green. I'm just kind of adding in a little bit here just to blend it out between that bright white and the green. That green is for the shadow of that pillow. And now I'm going to do a new layer on top of everything here. And we're going to do a blend mode. So I'm going to do a little bit of sunlight here. I'm going to grab that light yellow orange color that we've been using for a lot of this lighter colors. Grab that soft brush, which is a Procreate brush that they provide, and just add some white light here on the right. Again, we will kind of blend this out a little bit more and do a blend mode on it, and then I'll add a few more details to the blanket and then we'll be done. I also added a little to the ground as well, and now I'm going to change the blend mode. So to do the blend mode, you just click the N on that layer that you're working on. I also changed the opacity down to 60% because it doesn't need to be as bright, but there's a lot of different options you can pick for the blend mode to make it look like this sunlight, this beam. So I like using screen and add a lot. I use those two a lot and overlay, but there's also a bunch like soft light. So if you don't want it to be as bright, you can do one of those, but I'm going to use screen for this one, and then I'm going to erase a little bit around the pillow and where these shadows are because that's not going to be directly bright in the sunlight. So I'm just going to erase a little bit here, and then we'll move on to the next step. And now to keep up with this kind of soft glow or glowy effect that I want, I have a brush also that I've included. I left it as an untitled brush. I never came up with a name with it, but it's just a bunch of dots. And so I'm just adding these dots all around to make it look like this soft glow. I changed the size of it a little bit as well, but I just wanted a little bit more of this glowy magical effect here for this. I did end up changing the color a little bit of this light. And so to do that, you just go into adjustments, click hue, saturation, brightness, mainly because it was a little too white for me. And so I wanted to bring a little bit more color. So I turned the saturation up, brought the brightness down a little bit, and then changed the hue just a little bit more so it's more yellow. But not too crazy of a change. It's still very light color. It's not too crazy. But now going into the blanket, I want to add a little bit more lightness to it. So I grabbed that lighter yellowish color that we've been kind of using, and just again using the same technique, just kind of adding in these V shapes just a little bit here and there because it wasn't pulling up that brightness that I wanted for this. And you can pick and choose where you want those highlights to hit. So I'm kind of doing it on the right side of where the shadows are that we added in because that's where I imagine the peak of the blanket being. But again, you can kind of pick and choose where you want those highlights to be. And with that, our sketch is complete. Thank you so much for being a Patreon member and for following along with this tutorial. Everything you need to recreate the sketch is linked below, the template, palette, and brush set. I hope this golden hour moment brought a little calm to your day, and I'll see you soon with another exclusive sketch.